Let's jump into this next story, and it's kind of changing the subject, but it goes in line with what we were talking about. We have this from Timcast.com. PragerU personality details YouTube kids promoting LGBTQ content. These videos are not child-friendly, and YouTube is pushing them to indoctrinate kids. And it's worse than that. This is Aldo Buttazzoni. YouTube Kids is grooming children with LGBTQ propaganda. Aldo, I think you actually you buried the lead here, and I mean this with all due respect. The real concern is that at a certain point, so what Aldo says is he signed up an account made for 9 to 12-year-olds, and then one of the first videos that pops up recommends a kid meets gender nonconforming person. I'm not as concerned with just that. The issue is when it gets into the ideas of consent, and they're telling children about consent, and they start talking about, here we go, consent is giving permission to someone or something. Why are they giving 9 and 12-year-olds consent lessons in a sexual context? This is what's alarming about what YouTube Kids is doing. So you think it's just in the schools, and Ron DeSantis has his plan to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion, but everybody in this is 5 steps behind what's actually been going on. And going back to ElsaGate, people have been giving their kids YouTube. Their kids they're like, YouTube Kids, it's good for you. And then you get some adult in a sexualized context like drag saying, let's talk about what it means to consent. And then in this thread, I think it's in this thread, you have Billboard Chris, we've had on the show, a guy telling him that their goal is to decouple age and consent. Quite literally saying he wants 12-year-olds to be able to consent with adults. This is what they're pushing on kids. I'm not surprised by it, but it's got to be insidious. It can't be overt. They can't come out right now and just say it. It's got to be a slow creeping malevolent force that goes under the radar. So when mom and dad are busy with work and they hand the iPad to the kid and sign up for YouTube Kids because YouTube Kids is safe, what does YouTube Kids say? Come here, little boy. Come into a sexualized context where we can tell you about consent. That's exactly what they're doing.
The internet and like television is like inviting a stranger into your home to babysit your children. Like if you wouldn't pick some random person off the street, you cannot trust anything that comes from the internet, cable TV. Like it is written by someone you don't know for a company that you don't know what their values are. Like even if you pick one video, the YouTube algorithm immediately serves up another video. Like there's no way for you to know for sure what's going to happen. And that's why, again, I can't help but think it's like inviting just a random person you met at the grocery store to come watch your kids for 2 hours. And I get it. Like, it's hard to be a parent. You've got a lot of stuff going on. Sometimes you need a break. You need to, like, have a way to engage your children that you don't need to be there present for. But, like,
what if
TV is not it, sir.
What if I told you that the YouTube Kids app was promoting child strippers to your 9 to 12-year-olds? Well, that's in the thread. Meet Desmond is amazing. Now, of course, his family's quite litigious, but there's a video of him dancing on stage for money at an adult gay bar. That is the same thing as go-go dancing. Why is a child doing this, and why are they promoting this to other children?
Well,
degradation of society.
That's for sure. Is that people are overly sexualized children will become overly sexualized adults and think it's normal or okay out of their own guilt. Like, hey, it's not so bad what happened to me, so
Which
this
is,
isn't so bad.
Terrifying and sad.
Yeah, it really is. Cycle of abuse.
But it's crazy because it also plays into what we've been talking about the erosion of community. Again, when people are so into sex, when they're so into themselves and their own genders, like they're not paying attention to what's going on. They don't know about the local school board or city elections. They don't know about any of this stuff. All they know is just, it's about my sexual identity, my proclivities, indulging myself. Nothing else matters outside of just treating yourself and it takes your eyes down, basically. Mm-hmm. And so it's, everything in life can be likened to sports. So basically what typically happens in football, normally quarterback, he gets the ball, he's looking up at the field, he's trying to find a receiver to throw the ball to, so he's got to be aware. But then when pass rush comes, they start throwing stuff in your face, he takes his eyes down, he can't throw the ball, he can't pay attention. You've suddenly stopped the game from progressing. He can no longer progress the ball, and that's what's happening with society. We've taken our eyes off of the prize, which is advancing humanity, technology, everything else, creating families, and now we put it down on our genitals.
Quite literally looking up at the stars. I'm thinking about sending probes to Alpha Centauri. It'll take like 80 years for a probe to get there. Could you imagine if we do that today? In 80 years, we will have probes in Alpha Centauri sending us data.
80 years?
Yeah, that's what I read anyway a couple weeks ago.
That sounds like really fast.
Yeah, it sounds super fast, like within a lifetime. I can go and double check it, but this is the stuff we should be focusing on. Is keeping our
Aliens
eyes up.
are watching. They're just going like, they had a lot going for them when they went to that moon, and now I don't know what they're doing.
Like when you're
We
calling
thought
a
they
cat.
might be a threat, but not so much anymore.
Some rich alien oligarch just lost all of his bet on like this interdimensional betting app, and he's like, "God dang it, humanity, you screwed the pooch."
But it reminds me of that expression, like, you can't see beyond the nose on your face, right? Like, if you can't stop but think about, like, your own identity and your own sexual pleasure, and we're introducing that earlier and earlier, like, how can you expect anyone to spend time thinking about, like, the society around them or moral philosophy or science or anything else? Like, everything is about the internal, and I think it's good to be in touch with your emotions, but you can't be so dominated by your, like, personal consuming thoughts that you are divorced from the world around you.
But wait, there's more, because we got to put a neat little bow on this. This ties into big pharma, because now when you get all these kids exploring all of these alternative sexualities, now you got the cisgender to trans pipeline. So they can now suddenly, if they want to explore, let's get some puberty blockers. Let's get some gender affirming care.
Yeah.
The next thing you know, again, that's where social media comes in. We're right here at the whole dead internet theory. They start getting engagement from other people in that community. They start flooding them and love bombing them. And so now they get addicted to that. Then next thing you know, they take it further. Boom. Now you done fully trans the kid from YouTube Kids. And, that's omitting a lot of steps, but it's basically how it happens.
Let's talk about dead internet theory, right? If people aren't on the internet, it's all bots, then where are the people? Are they just not using the internet? Never did?
Man, they're touching grass, touching all kinds of grass.
I think there are tons of people who are not as engaged. Like, we talk about this a little bit, but like, for your job and for all of us, like, being connected to the internet, being on Twitter, stuff like that, like, it is part of a professional hazard. Like, you need to have the information. But if you are like an electrician who gets up really early and works on jobs, then comes back and you hang out with your family, like, you don't really have the time to just scroll on your phone endlessly and keep up with who's mad at who on Twitter. I mean, I think that there's just a life outside. The other part is, like, some people actively choose not to be online, right? They choose not to have televisions in their home. They choose not to sign their kids up for, Instagram or whatever else. Like, you can be disengaged. And you've talked about this a little bit, Ian, like, there are alternative platforms, right? Like, I know some parents who want to share kids of photos of their kids, but out of privacy concerns, they don't use Facebook, they use something more private. Like, there are people who don't rely on the rest of the world for entertainment and for us professional content. And I think that's healthier. It's just hard because, all of us need it. Like, this is our job.
Yeah, I think about what if the power went out. That crosses my mind at least every week. I'm like, what would my life become if we had no electricity?
I mean, part of me is just like secretly in the back of my mind saying like, please
Do it.
Yes. Yes. Because I got a van that can generate its own power and I'll be down by that river just fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think of like
back and just kicking the feet, some straw in the mouth, and just cast a line and forget about all the bullshit.
Well, I think of like
need to.
all the reporters who like had to go sit in really boring town hall meetings to like get the information. And then they had to call people on the phone and talk to them constantly. Like, journalists still do that from time to time, but like, we are used to getting things much faster because we have the internet.
Nowadays, they just read tweets and report on tweets. Like, literally, MSN journalists, I don't know what they do. All they do is literally just write articles based on what, this world reacts to this world reacts to that, and they just hyperlink tweets.
Do you know how many times some news outlets picked up one of my fake tweets and ran it as fact? No, for real. Like, there's just, how about when I said the Queen should be impeached? So I can't remember exactly what happened, but I said impeach Queen Elizabeth, and then meaww.com wrote an article saying, podcaster Tim Pool calls for Queen Elizabeth to be impeached, and I was just like, holy crap!
When that started, it was
hilarious.
The indication of the rupturing of that form of media is when they just started quoting Twitter.
Yeah,
It was like 2013 or something.
Imagine this: journalists like for the New York Times walking into the middle of the Lower East Side, and there's a guy outside just like rocking back and forth. They're like, "Oh, impeach Queen Elizabeth! Impeach, sir. What was your name? What was your name? Bill Smith. Let's run it." And then it goes back to the New York Times. Says front page: Bill Smith calls for impeachment of Queen Elizabeth.
That's what they do.
And then they're like, "Hey, look, he's a nobody." But people are going to see the story and they're going to be like, wow, I wonder who this guy is.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing.
Bill Smith, I hate that guy. God darn it, rabble. Oh, God, it's so funny, though, because, you sort of think about this, and then this goes into AI. Like, AI is literally getting all the data off of all the crazy stuff that gets all the clicks, and then it just incentivizes people to write even crazier articles, which causes people to tweet crazier stuff, bro.
And then people get in trouble for like interacting with tweets too. Like we've moved beyond just like people writing stuff. Like it's like, oh, Ian Crossman liked the impeach Queen Elizabeth tweet, so he is supportive of this movement. Like it's like, you know what I mean? It just becomes this sort of hysterical culture off of something you wrote as a joke, or maybe you feel that way. Maybe you want
can't
to
impeach the
her.
Queen.
I know.
It's ridiculous. There have been several times where I've tweeted something that is intended to make neither point. So it's like meant to highlight just the circumstance. Like I called the MSNBC Yasmin Vesuvian story about how she got the cold and got myocarditis, and I called it anti-vax propaganda. Because what, she had a cold for 3 months? Clearly, they were making a segment that was going to trigger anti-vaxxers and make them think this was... Like, I'm not intending to make any point other than this is the narrative. This is like just highlighting this thing, basically. But they will take it and be like, Tim Pool is dead serious and thinks MSNBC does these things. And I'm like...
And part of their story is also, look how many people are listening to this guy. Look how many people are listening to that. They don't point it out. They're not like, it got 80,000 retweets, but they don't really report on stuff until it gets to a certain level of people listening. And then they're like, oh, we have to take it seriously. But we don't really know how.
Accelerate.
Writing a story about it.
At this point, guys, we just accelerate it as fast as we can, man. Just hot takes. They write hot stuff. People go mad. People go insane. And the loop and cycle just continues.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.